A tennis coach at George Mason High School in Falls Church is facing 3 felony charges of taking indecent liberties with a child by a custodian for an inappropriate sexual relationship with a student. Research indicates that 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 5 boys is sexually abused before their 18th birthday by someone they know well. Board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Carole Lieberman joins us now with tips parents can use to discuss acceptable and unacceptable behaviors between children and adults. And we'll also be talking about grooming. Good morning to you, Dr. Lieberman. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
We mentioned the numbers at the beginning there, but I think it's worth mentioning again. 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 5 boys sexually abused before their 18th birthday. Those numbers are stunning. And I think a lot of people may wonder, how is that possible? How does this happen?
Yes, and you know, those numbers really don't reflect the full picture, because this is just that these have been recorded. You know, are other sexual attacks that really never get to be publicly known. But how does that happen? Well, for one thing, it happens because the parents feel awkward in having these conversations about the birds and the bees, you know, when they're young. And it really is important to start these kinds of conversations when the child is really young, or at least before that, by the time they go to school, certainly. And you can talk about it in a way like if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, if someone wants to touch or look at parts of your body that are under your bathing suit, you know, depending, of course, upon the age of the child, there are ways of talking about it that, you know, think about it, even though, yes, it could be awkward and so on, but there are books that you can get to help you go through that conversation. But, you know, what's better, feeling a little awkward with the conversation or finding out later that something awful has happened?
Let's talk about younger children, because obviously this is the first time at a very young age that they'll be having any kind of conversation like this. What are some things to avoid with a child? Because you want to make sure you have age-appropriate conversations about this.
Well, you don't want to necessarily go into great detail to the point that you are scaring the child. You can have pictures, you know, of anatomy. That's fine. You know, of course, these days with things that kids are being taught in school, you know, really, if parents have to get the jump on talking about the appropriate things rather than letting the child hear things in school that really might not be the way you would want to talk about it.
Yeah. You know, one thing, we're showing some of these tips on the screen here, and I think a good starting point that covers most of this is letting a child know they are empowered and it's encouraged to say no, right? If you just feel uncomfortable and not having to explain or justify that, right?
Yes, absolutely. You know, and to tell them that to quickly tell somebody, you know, of course, make the relationship with the child and yourself a really trusting one in general so that they feel okay to tell you. But, you know, I've treated lots of kids, all different ages, who have been sexually or physically abused, including by parents or neighbors or priests or, you know, all kinds of people, perpetrators. Mm-hmm. And what hurts them the most, it can leave scars on children. Needless to say, they need to be in therapy after something like this happens. But the thing that hurts them the most is when they tell a trusted adult, and the adult doesn't do anything, doesn't tell anyone, you know, is ashamed themselves. I mean, because kids feel ashamed, they feel guilty, they feel they did something to bring this on, so that the person tells them that you should keep it a secret. So they threaten them oftentimes and say, I'm going to hurt your mommy or your sister, or what, I'm going to hurt you if you tell somebody. So you really have to look at all of these different things. And when it's a tennis coach, for example, a winning tennis coach, he has a lot of power. You know, kids want to be liked by him, want to be special.
Yeah, so, you have the power dynamics there. In the last 30 seconds here, Dr. Lieberman, I want to get to something that's just as important. What are the signs to look out for?
Yes. A lot of kids will either lash out at parents, or they will become secretive and spend a lot of time isolating in their room. Sometimes they can start cutting themselves or doing other self-harm. They can complain, they can regress to behaviors that they had as a younger child. They can complain about headaches or stomach aches, you know, that are psychological in nature. They can, as soon as you get any kind of hint, you really need to start to talk to them, tell them it's not your fault. If there's something secretiveness, that's a big one.
Yeah, so important to try to prevent this, but just as important as you mentioned there, if it does happen, to let the child know that it's courageous for them to have come to you and let you know. So both events, right, can have a strong impact on the child. Thank you so much, Dr. Carole Lieberman, for speaking with us this morning and sharing these important tips. And there's her information there if you'd like to reach out, both her website and her Twitter. Steve, I'll send it over to you.